Shigosegenmon, or four vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Aloha everyone. I'm Reverend Myoshin Kaniumoe of Alaneo Zendo in Hilo, Hawaii, and I've been asked to share something about our Zen Buddhist practice in this difficult time of COVID-19. Our Zendo space at the Church of the Holy Apostles is currently off limits, so I'm speaking to you from my family home here in Hilo. If you have been following these talks, you have already heard Bishop Komagata and Reverend Nakade speak thoughtful and timely words about our current world situation. Rather than restate those heartfelt messages, I will simply talk about a part of our practice that is at its core and may be helpful given these times. Our practice gives us the tools to help ourselves so that we can go on to help others. In times of high stress, it is easy to forget or overlook these simple resources. Yet all we need is to be gently reminded and reassured that what we already know can be helpful. Understanding is one of these resources. Fear can block our ability to clearly see and deal with difficult situations. Without a clear understanding of our situation, how can we ever hope to work out our way through difficult times? In the case of our present situation, in addition to the fear of contracting COVID-19, it is fair to say that there is a great fear of the unknown. We fear the societal changes brought by the disease. We fear that things will never go back to the way they were. Our fear, however, connects us to this moment. Even though we try our hardest to cover up fear, to mask it, to try and make it go away, in the end, fear can be a great teacher if we learn to look at it squarely and see that what we are doing is not working. When we see this and can recognize our own shortcomings, we may then move forward with humility and courage. What we are experiencing today is unlike anything anyone has experienced in modern times. The great flu pandemic of 1918 is now well past the memory of most people alive today. My mother, who was born in 1914 and who lived to be 97, would tell stories of that time of great sickness when she was a little girl growing up in northern Minnesota. They were still years away from widespread electrification, telephones, and indoor plumbing. Yet here we are more than 100 years later, doing some of the same things that helped control the spread of disease back then: self-isolation, good hand hygiene, and limiting public gatherings. The barrage of frightful news stories can be overwhelming. It is easy to be in a totally reactive frame of mind when faced with the news of this worldwide pandemic. One day everything seems to be fine. You go to the grocery store and casually buy whatever you need. The next day, the store is out of many common items, and weeks later we still don't know if there will be enough. It almost seems funny. Why do people panic buy toilet paper? Not just here, but all over the world. Fear of contracting a possibly deadly disease has changed our collective and individual behaviors. But how long can we keep this up? Faced with a deadly contagion, our fight and flight reaction kicks in. Our natural response is a purely reactionary one, and in this case for good reason. Self-preservation and the preservation of those near and dear to us drives us to irrational behaviors such as hoarding. In the face of this situation, it is easy to understand the wide range of emotional responses to it. Early on, when toilet paper, paper towels, hand sanitizer, and disinfectant wipes were impossible to get, I heard of many cases of people being completely overwhelmed and having anxiety or panic attacks. Fear is a great motivator and has kept our species alive through some pretty awful times. Fear is a primal emotion, and if we are not careful, it can control our lives in ways that are negative and non-productive. These kinds of emotional responses, while stimulated by external circumstances, are created by internal processes. In other words, we make ourselves feel the way we do. We paint ourselves into the emotional corner of high anxiety and overwhelming feelings. We do this to ourselves, and we can just as well work ourselves out of these emotional corners. Some people may need professional counseling and all the resources that professionals can offer. If you feel in need, seek help, even if it may be difficult to find in these lockdown circumstances. We all need help from time to time, and it is nothing to be ashamed of. It is also something that needs to be attended to with utmost seriousness. Our mental health is just as important as our physical health, but gets far less attention. In this time of pandemic, there is not nearly enough mention of mental health. Once we are in a severe emotional state, it can be difficult to find another way forward. However, it can be as simple as deciding in this moment. That is not to say that the work will be easy, but if we have perseverance, we can achieve whatever we set out to do. The key here is to understand that we can decide for ourselves what kind of mental world we want to live in, since we have the ability, in most cases, to decide our own path. We create our own anxiety and fears, and we can learn not to let them control us. The first step along the path of not letting our emotions and thoughts rule our behavior is to realize and accept that we do have ultimate control over that respect of our lives. In time, you will come to understand this for yourself. Control is a tricky word that carries much baggage. To say that we can control something conjures up a fantasy that we can control things with the wave of one's hand. What we are talking about here is more like reconditioning ourselves in a way that reframes our reactions to extreme or even everyday situations. This is more subtle, but it is far more accurate. Start by taking 5 minutes out of your day and find a comfortable straight back chair and just sit. Don't try to do anything except sit. As you sit there, you will begin to be conscious of the noises from your house and of the neighborhood. You will become aware of your own breathing and the many thoughts that stream through your mind. In truth, you cannot really control any of this, including all of those thoughts. Instead of trying to hang on to all of those thoughts, or trying to follow them, just let it all go. Keep letting go of all these things, your thoughts and feelings, for the full 5 minutes. Be an observer of everything that comes up. Be an observer of even your own thoughts. Mentally step back, let go, and just watch. Use a timer or an alarm clock, and just see how long you can go before you have to get up. If 5 minutes feels too short, try 10 minutes. Do this once a day for a week. Then try once in the morning and once before you go to bed. Just sit straight up in a chair with your eyes open, looking down slightly, and breathe normally. This little exercise brings your consciousness together with your body. A 5 or 10 minute timeout is a way to put ourselves in touch with ourselves. So why should we want to do this? When we put ourselves in touch with ourselves, we can begin to see ourselves from the vantage point of being one step removed, of seeing ourselves outside of ourselves. When we take this vantage point into the rest of our day, we can start to see why we act the way we do in many situations. When we start to see our behaviors in this way, we begin to see that we have a choice in our behaviors and emotional responses. With time and perseverance, we can learn to recognize our reactive behavior in many situations, and so can start to choose a better course of action. When we start down the path of seeing ourselves outside of ourselves, we begin to see ourselves in others. We start to see a kinship with the suffering of others. Seeing ourselves in others shows us how much we are truly alike, which brings us to see how interconnected we are. Compassion arises out of this new perspective because we do not see ourselves at the center of things. All of this from spending some quiet time sitting in a chair. Some have called this the path of a bodhisattva. But whatever you call it, doesn't this seem like a good thing to be doing with one's time? Some days will be easier than others, so you have to really stick with it. This is not a means to an end, however. Do not expect that you will ever get anything out of this. The gaining comes from not grasping. The harder you try to get something out of this, the less you will see as a result. But if you apply yourself wholeheartedly, without grasping desire, the universe will open itself to you. Seeing that we are not the center of all things and realizing that we are more alike than different is liberating. This is part of a practice that can lead one to freedom and happiness. Our panic and despair can be turned into something else if we choose to make the effort. We cannot stop having powerful emotional responses to situations that come up in life. But what we do with that emotional energy will make all the difference. Can we reframe and rechannel that energy in ways that are more helpful? Our current isolation is gradually ending, and as we enter the next phase of normal, let us be mindful of those behaviors that show kokua for our families, communities, and all beings. For some of us in the moment, that might be to stay home if we are sick or more medically vulnerable. For others, that could be picking up groceries for an elderly neighbor or calling an old friend, just because. For many of us, it may be accepting help without shame. Or it might be doing those seemingly small things, smiling beneath your mask or face covering, sharing your hand sanitizer, waving hi to the guy walking his dog across the street, or saying thank you to the store clerk. Because really, we're all in this together. May you and your loved ones be well and safe. Mahalo for sharing this time. May this merit extend universally to all, so that we together with all beings realize the Buddha way.